Good to see you, my friend.
What's happening, Phil?
How's
How are you?
everything, man?
Everything's good, man.
I'm
Good,
so
good.
happy to be here at 22nd Street because you're passing by all the time. I get to say hi, and I get to walk down and look at your rig, the Apollo, and she's coming together. She looks great.
Finally, thank you. We've been trying, the last couple months there have been a lot of stuff doing, taking care of some things, getting some things straightened out. New refrigerator, beer cooler, all kinds of stuff, new wiring up in the wheelhouse, all kinds of stuff like that. So hopefully in another week or so we're on the downward thing, and hopefully by next weekend I believe we'll be fishing.
Yeah, there's a lot of great signal. We're going to get into that. We're going to talk about, I have a 2-day trip. I'm going to use that to just kind of talk to people about what you think the options and possibilities are. But Greg Obymako, maybe a lot of people don't know exactly who you are. When did you get involved in sport fishing? How old were you when you caught the bug?
Oh wow. Well, obviously I started fishing at a real young age, mainly freshwater with my dad.
Mm-hmm.
And
Where at?
a lot of the high Sierras,
Yeah.
stuff like
so you
that.
get to experience that beauty.
We
up
did a
there.
lot of Yellowstone, we'd go for summer vacations and fish a lot of lake trout at Lewis Lake and in Yellowstone, or some cutthroats and actually Yellowstone Lake and stuff like that.
Gorgeous, isn't it?
My brother lived in Oregon.
Uh-huh.
I used to go up there in Oregon and do a lot of fly fishing up there on the Metolius River, outside of Sisters, and I did a lot of freshwater fishing. And my dad actually worked with Mike Thompson's dad.
Oh, yeah?
And that's where I basically got involved in saltwater fishing back in, I want to say 82 or 83 was my first trip on the Amigo with Mike. It was an albacore trip, and I caught, 3 or 4 albacore. And it was from then on, I tried to go on pretty much all the Robert Shaw trips, where Dick Thompson worked. And that's where I got to meet Mike Thompson, and then
AKA Wiggy from
Wiggy,
Newport
yes,
Landing.
Newport
In case people don't
Landing.
know him, he's a very instrumental guy in this business, right?
Yes, and then actually Mark Thompson, the old owner of the Phantom and stuff like that, he was a deckhand on the boat. Mark
Yeah.
Idemiller, who ran the Nautilus for numerous years for Mike, and Mark Idemiller actually gave me my first job on the Nautilus. I want to say it was 88,
Wow. Yeah.
I believe 88, when I was a junior, getting ready to be a senior in high school.
Yeah.
And started working there, and I worked there till I want to say 90, and I moved over to Davies Locker on the Caldon with Jack Kimnitz, and I got my license there and started running that boat in 92 and ran that boat till 96, and then I was out of Davies Locker, Cat Special, Thunderbird, freelance. I ran the Nautilus, ran the Caldon, the old Rising Star, which was the Maximus now.
Yeah. You did some commercial stuff, I know,
Commercial
right?
stuff. I did a lot of squid fishing, commercial squid fishing, here and there. And I'm actually doing that during the off season now, pretty steady for the last 6 or 7 years. But I kind of been all over.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
So you have a vast experience in commercial and local fishing and offshore fishing and all of that stuff, which is cool when you jump on a boat with a captain with all those different types of experiences. You're with the right guy. I feel like it.
I guess. I'm not going to go that far. I'm sure some people like me, some people don't. You know what I mean? It's kind of a love-hate thing. I don't think there's a happy medium there. But, we try. That's all we do. I like to look at when I take people fishing, I go try to catch what I would like to catch. If I was paying the kind of money people are trying to, I'm going to try to fish, as if they're actually getting their money's worth. You know what I mean? That's one thing that I've always tried to live by is, fish hard. And sometimes it doesn't pan out. It's what's the old saying goes, sometimes you're a hero, sometimes you're a zero.
Yeah, exactly.
You know what I mean? So,
exactly.
Unfortunately, there's been quite a few times that I've been a zero, and sometimes I've been a hero. So.
Yeah, it happens. And, when I walk on a boat, some captains will pay me some respect, and I don't want it because they'll say, what do you want to do? And I look them straight. I'm going to tell you what I'm going to say to you. If you say that to me on May 31st, I'm going to say, you've been out here every single day. You do this all the time. You're way ahead of me.
Right.
You go where you think it's best.
Right.
And if it doesn't pan out, I'm cool with that because I know you've got all the intel, you've got all the knowledge, and more importantly, you've been on the water for the last 30 days.
Right.
You get a feel for what's going to happen, right?
Well, you kind of do. You have your network and stuff, people that you talk to, and there's information spread here and there and stuff like that, And yeah, obviously being on the water, you're going to have the best advantage. I mean, but there's always people that just want to come out too, and they're like, hey, I don't really want to go try to catch this. Let's just concentrate on this.
I get that.
There's certain times like that. And, I mean, Phil, it's like I'll be honest with you. I'm really curious about fishing sea bass. That's one thing that I really would like to do with this Apollo is go back to like, what it was when I was, growing up and, fishing the beaches at Catalina and stuff like that. The problem with this is that to try to get people to commit to that, it's like nowadays there's no bycatch at Catalina. It's not like 20 years ago when you could go catch yellowfin croak or, calico bass. You could catch sheep's head on the beaches. There was other things, stuff that you could get bites on.
It's kind of do or die now.
Nowadays it's, we're going to commit to this and we're going to grind it out for 10 hours fishing beaches. We might not get a bite. We might get that, half hour, 45-minute magic window where you catch your limits and stuff like that. You know, I'm really curious about that. I enjoy that type of fishing.
I do too.
I enjoy the challenge of it. You know what I mean? And a lot like nowadays it's primarily small boat stuff. You know what I mean? And I don't feel that it has to be that. And I'm not saying that, every day you're going to go out and catch them, but I think there is that opportunity to go and catch. I mean, look at the guys are starting to catch them here, this last week.
The Pride had some fish. I know there's fish up north, and some of these yacht guys that asked me to keep my mouth shut, and I do. They've been getting them, so.
So, I mean, I'm curious about that. And I know there's probably a lot of private boaters out here going, oh, great, there's going to be a sport boat on the beaches.
Damn right.
It's like, I mean, I've been doing that for a while. And I mean, I feel like I've learned from a few really good captains in that, like Craig Beaker, Jacobs,
I love Craig.
Kenny Wager, stuff like that. I mean, Don Brockman was probably one of the best sonar fishermen I've ever seen in my entire life. Just the way, I mean, the way he'd work that sonar back in the, late 80s, early 90s on that Barracuda and stuff was, I mean, even the Yellowtail on that at the island,
Yeah.
It was pretty impressive to watch,
There's something different this year for sure. The water's a lot colder. I mean, the buoy at Long Beach 2 days ago was 51 degrees, man. That's like someone's going to go out there with the flashers and catch a salmon here pretty soon.
Right.
It's freaking cold. But that cold water bodes well for a lot of squid, and we seem to have had it all winter long.
Yes.
That can be a magnet for getting fish here. And I'm hearing more noise out of Cat this year. You mentioned Catalina. It's, the epicenter's definitely been up there in the Channel Islands for sea bass the last several years. Those guys, man, they've just been walloping them. What do you think? Do we have a chance for that to kind of manifest itself down in our neck of the woods for a change?
I think we do, Phil. I mean, from what I've seen, I mean, actually, I haven't physically been out fishing. I ran the Amigo a couple weeks ago on the opener, and we did spend some time on the beaches, 6-7 hours fishing the beaches at Catalina, and it was just still a little off the color of the water. I felt the conditions were, it was in that transition period, and I think like 4 or 5 days later on the backside of that moon, some guys started catching a few fish over there, or whatever. I don't know exactly where, but I felt like it had potential once that brown tint got off the water on the beaches and stuff. But I do think with the amount of squid that was around this year, there's still pretty decent amount. I think it's kind of in transition where it's fluctuating right now. Like the spawn there was quite a bit at Catalina that's kind of tapering off, but there's still areas where you can still go catch your bait. And I think with the amount of squid that was around and stuff like that, I think the potential with, you said, the colder water and everything else, the potential's there, whether it's going to be Clemente, Catalina, Santa Barbara. I think Nick, we pretty much, there's the sea bass there that lasts for a little bit, the Channel Islands, stuff like that. But from what I've heard and seen in reports is it seems like there's bigger schools being seen this year than previously. You know what I mean? Like before it'd be a handful of fish coming through, that type of stuff. Like there's been some decent schools seen at our local islands here, recently. So
I'm so excited about that. I'm hearing the same thing, and I'm really excited. I would love, like you said, go back to those days where we were catching sea bass at Catalina. Catalina used to be the epicenter, right?
Right, for sure. And Phil, I don't know what the answer is. I have my thoughts, you know what I mean, why the fishery's kind of gone away the last few years and stuff. I think,
Would you share some of those? Because I'm always curious to hear from a guy that has such knowledge like you.
well, you know, I think a lot of it is this transition we've had. We've had kind of a warm water trend here the
Yes.
last 8 years or
Yeah,
9 years.
right.
I think that's kind of shifted the biomass. Like you look at where the squid's been, you know, Channel Islands and stuff like Clemente, Catalina. Like when was the last time you saw a real good squid float down at La Jolla?
Yeah,
I
right.
think over the last 7, 8 years, it's kind of shifted the biomass further north, and I think that sea bass has moved with it. You know what I mean? You look at
absolutely.
this bluefin, you know, that showed up here, what, 8, 10 years ago,
Yeah.
whatever. That was primarily all down further south. Like you hear of like, you know, like the Fortune and stuff, like way back in the day, going out and, you know, catching a handful of bluefin on their way down the beach or
Yeah.
something, you know,
Yeah.
to sea dress or springtime or something like that. You know, they'd catch a couple 200-pounders or something. And that seiner fleet was always further down the beach. And I think that whole biomass has shifted, you know, whether it's the warm water, whether the food's pushed up, whatever it is. I mean, I'm no marine biologist. I mean, this is just like, you know, my train of thought on it. And I think now it's starting with this colder water, it might be pushing back down. And I think we're going to stand a pretty good chance of catching, you know, pretty good fish.
Man,
you know?
I think you have got it nailed down. And you may not be a marine biologist, but I will tell you right now, I think you have more knowledge than some guy that's in an ivory tower somewhere because you're out there on the water all the time. And I couldn't concur with you more. It's about the oceanography, isn't it? And those fish and that bait and all that is going to move with those changing conditions, right?
Right. Well, for sure. I mean, obviously, squid doesn't like warm water, you know, so we sit here and, you know, as a commercial squid fisherman, it's like, you know, there was 3 years back, I mean, there was really no squid down here. You know what I mean? Like guys were going up to Oregon and stuff like that and catching the commercial guys and stuff like that. And it's like, you look at that and I mean, you never really heard of that. I mean, you know, Monterey, I've heard a lot of, you know, summertime fishery in Monterey and stuff like that, you know, but primarily we always had our fish down here. And like I said, I mean, what's it been? 07, 06, last time there's actually been a decent amount of squid down at La Jolla.
Yeah, right.
You know what I mean? There's been, you know, like Torrey Pines and stuff like that, but it hasn't been like it, you know, like what I remember growing up in the industry and stuff like that, you know, and stuff. But I think going with that, I think, like I said, that all this transition, I think it's starting to slide back down with this colder water, and I'm not sure what's going to happen because you look at all this stuff going on. They say the water temps are 10 degrees warmer than what they are down at the equator, than what they should be this time of year. This massive El Nino is starting to form.
Right.
You know, so I don't know. I mean, would it, in a perfect world, yeah, it'd be great if we had, you know, colder water here.
And then
squid was here. We caught our sea bass. We had our springtime yellowtail. You know what I mean?
and
That type of
Dorado
stuff.
and yellowfin.
And then we got that push. You know what I mean? I mean,
That's what I'm dreaming about, man. Do you think that if that comes together, that's going to be a super bitching year?
that would be amazing.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? That would be absolutely amazing. But, you know, then again, I'd also like to see a fall fishery, you know, on that, like back in the day, like October, November, you know, fishing these high spots at, whether it's Clemente, you know, Farnsworth fishing, you know, the Tanner, well, more so like Cortez and stuff like that on that bigger grade yellow. I'd like to see some of that. And like,
Me
you
too.
know, but I think with that big bluefin, we've had this, you know what I mean? So we haven't really paid much attention to the Outer Banks as much, you know, and that type of stuff because you know, and I get it. I mean, who doesn't want to go catch a trophy bluefin? I mean,
Absolutely.
you know?
And there's no way you're going to walk out of here today without talking about the A word, the albacore word. I want you to make a fool of yourself like I do every single year, predicting albacore and they never show up. But they are a cooler water liking tuna, correct?
Yes.
What do you think?
I think it's cooler and cleaner water. I think they're very, you know, like we always say, deep purples, you know, albacore water. This water looks like albacore water. They're a very, at least my thoughts on it is they're a very sensitive fish where they don't, the chlorophyll, like everything has to be in line. And I mean, let's be honest, there's a lot of people that live here in California. There's a lot of runoff. There's a lot of stuff that goes out in the ocean that, you know, other fish can handle and stuff like that, or I don't feel that albacore wants to come in as far as it did, you know, and who's to say that fish hasn't been outside the dumping grounds? Who's to say, you know what I mean?
Right.
And we don't know.
busy
We're not
with
going
that
that far.
bluefin,
We're
right?
fishing, you know, in the inner banks and stuff like that. There's really no one going up that way. I mean, Morro Bay doesn't have any boats really going out and looking for it. You know what I mean? Who's to say there's not, you know?
I agree.
But I mean, you look at like, you know, like the albacore guys and stuff like that, I mean, pretty much the majority of that stuff's from Fort Bragg up, with the majority of it being the Columbia River and up,
Yes.
Westport and all that stuff. So I don't know what to make out of the albacore, honestly, Phil. Yes, I would love them to come back because they are such a fun fish to catch.
They are.
People really love them.
They're
And
great
they're crowd
to eat.
pleasers. You know what I mean? It's I would love to see that. That would be great. If we could get fish out by the 60, out by the fly, you know what I mean?
Cortez even.
On the
right?
tip of the condom, like all that stuff.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But I'm not really sure. I mean, I'd like to sit here and say, oh, the cold water, but we've been fooled by that so many times before.
2 years good, straight for me.
Yeah. Well, the other day out at Clementi, when we were driving out to go fish rockfish, I mean, there were big spots of like 4 to 5 inch anchovy. Which was something.
Ooh.
I've seen the smaller, like big spots of pinhead, but I mean, this was big.
Morro Bay bait.
Yes.
Yeah.
Like,
what we used to call Morro Bay bait, right?
I mean, the sea lions had it all balled up and, birds picking it and stuff like that. And, when you first pulled up on it, you're like, is that sardine? And then you see it's all big old anchovy.
Oh, really?
So, I mean, that's something new. So, yeah. I mean, but I don't know.
Well, it's a guess at the very end, but that anchovy, that excites me a little bit.
I guess it's wishful thinking, right?
Yeah, man. And people say to me all the time, I don't get why you want a dumb 20 to 30 pound albacore when we have these 200-pound bluefin, and it's a guy who's never experienced it before, because if they'd experienced it, they'd know, right? It's so much fun. They bite nails. They're user-friendly.
Yes.
They're good to eat.
Yes.
You're not on a 200-pounder for one guy for 2 hours.
Everybody else is watching.
Having fun.
Everybody has the opportunity. Yes.
Yeah. So it's all those reasons. And there's no reason, I don't think, that if they did show that we could have the bluefin and the albacore mixed together. We've seen that before.
True.
All the time, right?
The unfortunate part, though, it's like when that bluefin gets lockjaw and that other tuna's mixed with it, it screws up the other tuna, though. That's the downfall.
That?
When you have them mixed together, it's like all of a sudden that bluefin goes off the bite, and so does the albacore. So does the yellowfin that's mixed with it, and you're like...
Oh, Greg, it's so funny you say that, because I can remember working on the Searcher, and I don't know whether it was Frank or Leroy or Norm or whoever was on deck, but the albies quit biting, and I'd go like, what's up? And they go, oh, they're acting like bluefin. They're mixed with the bluefin. They start acting like the bluefin. I'm like...
Wigman used to always talk about that. Mike Thompson, that was like his biggest thing. So, oh, great, they're mixed with these things. Now they're not going to bite, So that was like, what one of his things, like, and I mean, I swear by it. It's, it made sense. You'd always see it whenever it got, and that bluefin went off the bite. So did the other fish that was mixed. It was weird.
That offshore fishery, are tides important when you're offshore fishing? Do you feel like tides have any influence when the light switch goes on? Do you notice that the tide?
Honestly, Phil, I've never paid attention to that offshore fishing.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess, with certain fish, yeah, probably.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But I don't know. I think there's like mainly like a lack of food out there that I think once you get into a zone where, you know what I mean, like the fish hasn't been feeding, you get on that right school. I mean, let's be honest. It feels like you pretty much, you're driving around looking at a blue screen waiting for a red blob to show up. You know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly.
Exactly. I think Jim Hughes told Markland that one day, and I thought it was the greatest thing ever.
That's funny.
That
is, yeah.
So, but I've never really paid attention to tides offshore. I mean, at the islands and stuff like that, because I mean, like the islands are a completely different fishery. You're dealing with current, you're dealing with, wind, you're dealing with trying to set up on the right part of the, understanding a spot and where you want to be, with certain conditions and stuff like that, if it bites on this type of current, you know what I mean? So I feel there's a lot more variables in whether it's Outer Banks, whether it's islands, whether it's this and that than it is.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, there's a lot more. So the guy that's out there listening right now, and he's going to go sea bass fishing. Maybe he's a novice. He's just getting involved in it. You're fishing in that short water, that milky colored, that water. What's a good approach for him? What kind of rig should he fish with? Should he be moving his bait around? Should he be soaking it on the bottom? Is it different from day to day than you're telling people, hey, you need to blah, blah, blah? What would you tell a guy that's just going to be fishing sea bass for the first time? Light line, heavy line?
Honestly, be as respectful as possible. Don't pull up on someone like, if you see a guy and he's pulling on a fish, don't come up and just throw your anchor over on top of him.
No, but I'm talking about your passengers on deck.
I tell my passengers, I say, hey, look,
I
said, here's what I would suggest. I would, maybe a light sliding sinker, to start, because you're fishing short water. I mean, the Amigo the other day, we were in 10 feet of water.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So it's short water, anywhere from 30 feet to, and depending on conditions or whatever, I would say, hey, have a sliding sinker set up. You know what I mean? Have a lead head set up. Have a light dropper loop. You know what I mean? That style of fishing, and I would say cast it out away from the boat. Not have everybody set up with sliding sinkers, but cast it over, let it slowly sink to the bottom column and work the bait back to you. Don't just cast it out, let it sit on the bottom, because primarily you're going to bat ray, 7-gill, leopard shark, something like that. You know what I mean? If you're going to go clicker fishing and just set it on the rail, I mean, and don't get me wrong, they do bite like that.
They do, unfortunately.
I think your best opportunity is what I tell my people is, hey, try different things. Not everybody rig up the same. And let's see if we can figure out a pattern. You know what I mean? If the fish are all on the slider the first 5 feet of the water column, then, hey, we can figure that out because 2-3 guys are hooking the fish. Well, the dropper loop guys and stuff like that aren't getting any bites. You know what I mean?
Yes.
So the fish are higher up in the water column, And with that sea bass, I think that's pretty important, And I think any type of fish, that's very important, like where the fish is going to be and where they're the most active at. You know what I mean?
Being really observant. That sounds like it's a key here. Seeing how some other guy is catching a fish and observing that, right?
I think that's with any kind of fishing. You know what I mean? Like back when you were a kid and you were walking, whether you're at a lake walking and you see some guy catching a bunch of fish. I mean, as a kid, hey buddy, what are you using? What are you catching these on?
Yeah, exactly.
You know what I mean? So I think in any kind of fishery, that's very, very important. I think it's of the utmost important, especially if you're wanting to learn, every day. I mean, I learn something new pretty much every day. You know what I mean? And I've been on the water for a long time, you know what I mean? But I feel like every day there's something to learn. The ocean's never going to disappoint you, you know what I mean, if you take it for what it's worth. And there's going to be days you're not going to get a bite, and there's going to be days that it's going to be the greatest day ever, you know what I mean, until the next time.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
I mean, there's always something to learn if you're willing to learn it. If you come out with that attitude that, I've been doing this for a long time and I know more than you and I'm the best fisherman and blah, 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 you're cheating yourself.
You are.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like, come out, be open-minded, and try to listen and learn. And if you're not sure, ask the crew. I mean, I tell all my people, hey, that's what we're here for.
To help.
Even me, anybody on this crew, you need help, ask. Don't be afraid.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
I feel like a lot of people don't take advantage of that.
Yeah, I do too. I think people are sometimes intimidated and a little bit nervous about
whatever
it,
it
which
is.
They shouldn't be.
You know what I mean? Embarrassment, whatever. Like, they're going to make fun of me because I'm not the best fisherman. You know what I mean? And that's not, at least, the majority of the crews on these boats, that's not what we're here for. We're here to help you, to try to give you the best time possible. Because, I mean, let's be honest, fishing isn't what it used to be. I mean, there are days when you can go and knock the crap out. There's quite a few days like that. But in a whole, it's more of giving, like, as a crew member, it's more of giving your passenger a good time, because that's all they're really paying for. They're coming out to escape, to whatever it is, to go relax, to go do, whatever it is, to get away from traffic, whatever. And they just want to come out and relax the morning. And yeah, catching fish is a bonus. Like I said, when I run a boat, I go to try to fish like as if I was the passenger. You know what I mean? Yes. So, and it's like, the crews are always going to try to catch you fish. And I know a lot of people try to say, like, oh, this guy didn't try, this guy didn't. They tried to the best of their ability or whatever, you know what I mean? Yeah. And it's like, there's a lot of, I think, misconception and misunderstanding in that. But,
sometimes the freaking fish don't bite. And you can burn your eyes out with the binocs, or you can anchor 100 times, and sometimes it doesn't come together. But it's not because 100%. The crew doesn't want it to come together.
The crew always wants you to. I mean, and you see a lot of that on social media. Oh, these guys didn't try. These guys did this, and it's like, dude, it's hogwash. Yeah. You know what I mean? The crew is going to make money by fish cleaning. The crew is going to, so if there's no fish, we're relying on you just tipping us for the best time. But you know what I mean? It's like, more importantly for a crew, if there's fish cleaning and stuff like that, because there's a lot of people that really want to go out, and I think everybody wants to go out and catch fish. Yeah. But to some people, that's the most important thing. Yeah. You know what I mean? Yeah. So
I think they're starting to become in the minority, though. I think you're right about getting away from the traffic, the hustle and bustle, and just looking out at the beautiful Eastern Pacific and saying, man, this is freaking peaceful. Right. This is really nice. And man, if I catch a sea bass today or a bunch of rockfish or something, right on, bonus.
Yeah, I do believe that. I think there's not a lot of people that are the guys that, oh, I need to go catch. I don't, but there are still a few that, you know what I mean? That's the most important thing to them. And I get it too. It's not cheap anymore to go fishing.
Yeah, I know.
Tackle's not cheap. Gear's not cheap.
Trips.
Prices. I mean, fuel's through the roof for everybody. I mean, I talked to a buddy of mine that works at the fuel dock here. He says that the price is going to go through the roof in the next month or two.
Yeah, I know.
What I mean?
Diesel's going to.
So it's like, I mean, and we get a fuel surcharge and stuff like that, and people are like, oh, why didn't you add this into the price?
Because we didn't know what the fuel was going to do in the future.
It's constantly changing. Yeah. So,
Care to make a comment about, at least, did you have the same experience as me, that when you were a kid, you rarely saw a white sea bass? There was a time period where there was none around, and then we did this repair to the environment and everything, and now, man, that fishery has come roaring back.
Yes, it has. Yeah. I think a lot of it, and I don't know all the factors. I think a lot of it are these grow-out pens.
Yeah.
I think there's a lot of other different factors. You know what I mean? And I think that fish moves too. You know what I mean? Like, I've heard stories that people feel like our Catalina fishery or San Clemente fish, the sea bass fishery is it has too much pressure on it, too much this and that. But you hear stories like I've talked to some of these old guys, thinking they were setting on spots of tuna, and stuff like that. And it turned out to be sea bass, like out at the Cortez and stuff.
How wild is that?
You look at the Tornado 4 or 5 years ago, they had that, they had limits in October, on the high spot at the Tanner of sea bass, and it's so random. I think that fish is just like every other fish. It just moves around and, but yeah, growing up, it wasn't really a thing, And I don't know what the factors were for that. I mean, I remember growing up when I was a kid here, the horseshoe kelp. I mean, you'd come out of LA Light and that was all kelp out to, outside of Furman all the way to like 18, 20 fathoms,
yeah.
It was like solid kelp all the way up the line, and it's not like that anymore.
I've even heard stories about guys running into schools of sea bass on the surface at mid-channel, the old guys. That fish maybe moving from the island to the coast or whatever.
Maybe.
So there's it's definitely an enigmatic species, and there's no species that'll drive you more crazy than sea bass. One moment, it's freaking wide open, and then
Yes.
you go back there the next day, and it's just off the bite. And they're there, you see them, you get all the evidence, but they just get lockjaw or whatever. They drive you crazy as an operator,
Yes.
I would think,
Yes.
huh?
When you see them and they're coming through on the media and they're like, please, just one bite. This is what I've been waiting for. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
then you don't get a bite, and you're just like, and it's like, yeah, that absolutely drives you crazy. That's like one of the most, I guess, I don't know the right word I'm looking for, but yeah, it's something that really drives you crazy as an operator and stuff when you're sitting there watching them on Fish TV and they're just swimming through it and you're like, God, this episode is boring. So, but
all right, so sea bass definitely seems like it's in our future. It's happening right now, but it's probably going to get better as that water warms up a little bit. Let's switch to another species, and that is bluefin tuna, because some guys are actually even starting to push the panic button this year, and I'm like, wait, calm down, everybody. The water's really a lot cooler. There's a different environment, and now they've taken their finger out the panic button because Polaris Supreme had limits last night. The Queen's been getting on them. They're in day range. They're pretty much day range of here. I don't want to say where because I don't want the fleet in San Diego or Mike Morrison yelling at me. And pretty much everybody can figure it out where they are. But they're close. They're biting. They're nice grade too, 20 to 50. When I say nice grade, I mean catchable.
yeah,
Yeah, that's
For
what I'm
sure.
talking about. When maybe somebody thinks when you say nice grade 2 to 300, that doesn't give everybody on the boat an opportunity.
No.
So that's another option that will manifest itself, probably get better as we move into the future. What do you think?
Well, yeah, I mean, you look at the last, when did that fish show up? 8, 9 years ago,
Yeah.
something like that, and the March and all this stuff, and doing all this stuff. And I mean, you say Gavin and you say, Aliar. I mean, those are probably two of the top guys
Yeah.
down in San Diego. I
Yep.
mean, don't get me wrong, there's quite a few guys down there are good, but consistently, I mean, Gavin and Aliar are pretty much,
They're on it. Yeah.
they're the guys, you
Yeah.
know. But you watch that fish, like they were seeing it further down the line and stuff like
Yes.
that. And talking again, going back to commercial, when the commercial scene, I mean, they filled their quota in like a week. I mean, I talked to one of the guys down there. They had one set for pretty much their quota.
Yeah, they were done the 16th of January.
Yes.
Boom.
And it was pretty quick. And then that fish just kept, coming up. And I mean, you look at last year, I mean, I think it was springtime when they had those phenomenal night bites on on this, 20 to 50 pound fish. And then there's some 100-pounders started moving in, and there was a little bit of daytime stuff. And then, I think it was June, everything kind of, the bluefin did a typical thing. It started moving around, it wasn't settled into an area, blah, 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 this and that. You see spots of breaking fish, or it got into a bait area where it was reluctant to bite for you. And, the whole transition. I mean, I think the whole summer, you watch from spring, summer and stuff with that bluefin, when it moves in, like I said, last couple of years, springtime night bites have been really good. And then, transition. And then obviously our fall fishery, I mean, I think this last year, October, November, and even into December was probably the best bluefin fishing all year long.
Yeah, I think it was.
And there was, good grade fish and stuff like that too to be had. So, and it's always fun to go out on the Outer Banks, and you can catch that, and then go see if there's a yellowtail or something like that.
How wild is that, man? I mean, you get a shot at that bluefin. You could catch sea bass conceivably the same day. You can get rockfish. Maybe catch yellows. It's really, really cool to have all those different options.
But I mean, I look to this year being the same. I don't really see anything that's really changed. I mean, the
on
fish,
that bluefin.
The fish is still here. I mean, you know what I mean? I don't know if the fish lives here year round. I don't know. There's a lot of theories of it and stuff, or if it's just doing its pattern and it's such a big biomass of it, you know what I mean, that is coming through here, that it's, continual or whatever, wherever it goes. But I think the season's going to be relatively the same as far as that's concerned. You know what I mean? And I'm not, I'm not like I'm not too concerned with it. You know what I mean? Because I think, like I said, I mean, you look at this early stuff, and I mean, going back 8 years, we never had this. You know what I mean?
Right.
We never had this type of stuff. Like, we were going rock fishing and fishing the front side of Clemente, or, they're chasing breezers down to yellows, or, stuff like that, sonar schools or whatever on the front side of Clemente in the springtime, May, June, that type of stuff. Like, we never really had this. This is all new, relatively, like I said, within the last 8 years or whatnot. So it's all learning, you know what I mean?
I think the key to it is that when Phil Friedman goes to China to teach, the big bluefin bite. So if they shut off,
so guys, pay attention to when Phil leaves. That's when you want to go fishing.
You can kick me the hell out of here and go back to China, for God's sake. The bluefin will bite again.
I like it.
So I'm on deck. It's nighttime, and you say, see the fish at 300 feet. Do I drop to 300 or do I drop to 350?
I would drop to 350.
Okay.
I would make sure. I mean, a couple things like, obviously the right size jigs and stuff like that. I would have an assortment from 250 gram all the way up to whatever the biggest they make, 400 or 450, whatever it is. I would have an assortment, because you can never tell what the conditions are going to do, whether there's a current out there, whether the wind picks up and starts blowing and the boat's moving faster. You're going to have to adjust that jig so it gets down to the fish. And you always want to go through the fish in hopes that you get bit on the sink, and then you want to wind through the fish to where you get a fish reacting to your bait. You don't basically, I mean, I guess you can drop it and stop it right at the fish. I'd like to go a little bit past and then up through them. So, I mean, with your spectras and stuff like that, mark every 100 feet on there, with a nail polish or paint or
they have that colored line.
Yeah, now. Or the colored line, that's 100 feet. That way you can tell or get a general idea. But, I mean, again, it's paying attention to what's going on with your surroundings, what the environment is giving you. You know what I mean? And using all those to your benefit,
Yeah, and if you want to cheat, once again, you go up to a crew member and you say,
there you go.
What do I need to be using here? Right? I do it all the time. I realize, I've been in this for a long time, but I'm sitting here in a freaking podcast office. You guys are on the water.
Right.
I walk on the boat, man, and I'm like, hey, even though I'm videotaping all the time now in my old age, right? But I tell guys when they come to me and say, hey, I go, hey, right here, talk to Greg, talk to Jeff, talk to whoever.
Right.
They were just here. They know way better than I know.
Yeah, and I mean, it's constantly adjusting, you know what I mean? I mean, we even adjust as the night progresses, you know what I mean? Or as we're going into it, We'll give you a suggestion, and then we'll watch as what's going on, and then, hey, change to this. This seems to be working better. This, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I mean, you look at that. I mean, what is it? I forget what boat it was that came up with a 16-ounce torpedo.
Yeah, I think it was Roy Rose on the Royal Polaris.
Yeah, the Royal Polaris,
Yeah.
I guess they were getting bit on the like brawler rig, the drop shot rig or whatever, and the sinkers were getting busted off. So they put a hook on a sinker, and I mean, you just look at all these different things, and it's I think a lot of the jigs are sold for fishermen.
Yeah,
I mean,
absolutely.
honestly, with the colors and stuff.
Yeah.
So, but I mean, I would think that weight, I don't think it's really like the bait swimming. Your jig isn't swimming. It's just a reaction because something goes darting by them.
Yeah, and they bite it, right?
Yeah, pretty much, So, I mean, but yeah, it's like I said, just pay attention to surroundings, if the fish are transitioning, you know what I mean? But, and have a couple of different setups, you know what I mean? Like have one with a 250, ounce and have one with a 400. That way, if the fish are shallow or there's not much wind and you're not drifting very fast, you can go with a smaller jig so it's not as much work for you, you know what I mean? Or if you have to go to the bigger jig and stuff like that, then that's, there was current or your line's going, you basically want to get bit straight up and down. You know what I mean? If your line's going way out from the boat, I mean, generally speaking, obviously jig fishing, generally speaking, that's probably not the best because you're stopping on the fish right away and you get that quick window and stuff like that to catch them before the school, moves off because eventually it's going to move off. That's just what happens,
Fish heavy? Heavy, like 100, 130? Is that what you want to see guys when they're dropping a jig? Or not?
I would think so because you never.
Right,
even with that smaller fish, you never know if you're going to hook into that 300 pounder.
That's the conversation
so you get
I
these
have.
guys coming out with this lighter line and stuff, and it's like,
be careful.
Yeah,
because you
can
never
catch
know.
one, but you might be here for a long time.
You know Scott Buchert, right? Yeah.
Scotty
so I have that conversation with him 14 times a day. He'll go, but the fish are 20 to 40 right now. Why do I need? I go, because Scott, you might hang your trophy fish and you're not going to get them on 65-pound braid. You need to.
That's one of the beauties and also, one of the unfortunate is you never know in the ocean. You never know when you pin on that sardine, when you drop that jig, what you're going to catch. I mean, look at us last year. I mean, my second hooked that swordfish, fishing bluefin and on a knife jig.
That was a beautiful. Tell us about that catch.
I wasn't on the boat.
Okay.
I got stories.
Do you know the story? Yeah.
I mean, Jordan was just out fishing and they were, drifting. Pretty much all the people had gone to sleep and he made a drop and he hooked the swordfish. I think there was one or two of the passengers up and he handed it off and they fought the thing and.
Did he recognize it as a different fish when he hooked it, or do you think he had a big bluefin?
Not at first.
Yeah.
I think at first they thought it was a big bluefin or whatever. Yeah. But I mean, it's just, even the Aztec last year, same thing. They caught a swordfish in the dark. There's just so many different things that you never know. You know what I mean? And
isn't that the beauty of this game?
That's the whole point. That's why we go saltwater fishing and we fall in love with saltwater because you just never know. The next thing could be that bucket list fish where you're going to a lake and you're like, okay, going trout fishing.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
It's like
trout.
Oh, cool! I caught a crappie. Oh, cool! I caught a large trout. You know what I mean?
No, man. Now you're reading my mind. That's how I feel about it.
But you know what I'm saying? I mean, I'm not taking anything away from freshwater because you
started there and you love it. Yeah.
But
still,
I think there's nothing more relaxing than getting on boat, going bass fishing or whatever. You know what I mean? Or going and floating around on a pontoon boat catching trout. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
It's cool. I still enjoy that.
So I'm on deck and I've got my heavy line now. I'm ready to drop. You say drop. How important is it that I drop after you say drop? Or can I take a swig of my coffee and kind of be slow? But, okay, I'll get to it in a second. That's a big mistake.
It's very, very important because, like I said, you got to figure at night where, the fish is wherever it is, 300 feet down, whatever. We're not throwing bait. We're not doing anything to try. Our lights stop it. And as soon as we can get our jigs through it, that's what's going to create whether the school's going to bite or not, the frenzy where it's going to react to your jigs. If you're taking your time and you're dropping it out, 9 times out of 10, if that school might come through 1 or 2 more times after, you know what I mean? But that's only if you hook a couple, you know what I mean? It's not something. So basically, as soon as you can get your jig down to the fish, the better opportunity that you are giving yourself to hook a fish and possibly catch one. You know what I mean?
Yes.
And I think most of the captains will say that. I mean, I had a talk with Aliar about this, and, Aliar was like very animate that, when this fish is nighttime fishing, he has a meeting with all his people on the boat, says, hey, you guys are sleeping during the day. I need everybody up at night. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it's like, it's just like stuff like that. So it's very important that you're Johnny on the spot and you're participating if you want to have that opportunity for yourself to catch one.
All right.
You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
So, it's very, very important that as soon as the boat, gets out of, and you can hear too sometimes, when the boat captains put it in reverse, if they do put it in reverse, some guys put it in reverse, some guys don't. They just take it out of gear and turn the wheel hard over, whatever they do.
Yeah.
So, but I mean, you can kind of figure that out. And if you're standing by, you can go and flip it out,
Yeah, absolutely.
So,
Bait fishing. Fluorocarbon, yes or no?
100%.
Okay.
Especially for bluefin.
Fluoro. Okay. They've been catching a few fish in the daytime, fishing 30-pound fluoro from what I've heard. And, I know you get tired of saying this. I get tired of saying it, but some guys out there still need to hear it. It's so important to choose a hot bait, right?
Yes.
I
And
mean,
if you're
take your
not,
time, right?
yeah, if you're not sure on what to look for, ask one of the crew members. They'll be more than happy to show you how to hook them, do all that stuff. You know what I mean?
What are you
But
looking? I mean, some guys will say just
you
the
know,
hardest bait in the well to catch is the one you want.
well, no, I
That's a
think
little.
you're looking for a lot of the color and stuff like that. Like none of the scales knocking off. If it's got blue, red nose, it's under stress. Red on its fins, it's under stress. You're just looking for the healthiest looking bait that has its most color, looks the most natural. And then obviously, just because it's the hardest one to catch doesn't mean it's going to be the fastest. You're going to burn through baits. My thing is, if you cast a bait out and it hits the water and doesn't swim, and take line off your reel, wind it up and change it. He's not a swimmer. Cast the bait out, he's got to start taking line off the reel. You know what I mean? And let him run. That's going to be the hot bait, what they call the hot bait, the one that as soon as it hits water, it's pulling line off the reel where you're not feeding it line, you're not doing it else. You're thumbing it, trying to hold it back because he's going so fast to take line. That's ideally, and it's like I said, you got to work at it, and I mean you got to pay attention again to your surroundings, because if that bluefin doesn't come to the boat and it's not on the corner, it's and you're watching out away from the boat 100, 200 yards away from the boat, the fish is boiling up swell or out away from the boat, you're going to want to get a bait that swims and soak it out there. Let it get far enough, you'll see, and you have to pay attention to that. And then if the fish is on the corner and you see that one guy who keeps changing his bait, starts hooking fish on the corner, as a butt hooked or shoulder hooked or nose hooked or collar hooked, however he's hooking it to get the bait to swim, mimic that. Pay attention to the guys. All the boats have those one guys that are on the boats that are just, like unbelievable fishermen.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? They're the guys who are like, God, how does he keep hooking these fish?
Right?
I mean? Watch what he's doing. Ask him.
Yeah.
9 times out of 10, those guys are going to be helpful and, you know what I mean? And tell you, because it helps the boat to catch fish. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
So, that's my biggest thing. You just got to pay attention to your surroundings,
100%.
what's going on.
That's such good advice. Coming out of the gate, do you have a way that you hook your bait to start with every single time, or are you looking for different conditions? And
You
like a nose hook bait, a collar hook bait, butt hook bait? Or you're changing.
It's hard to say. I mean, my go-to, like to start, is I probably start off with a nose hook bait. You know what I mean, just to get a feel for what's going on. Or a butt hook. You know what I mean, depending on what the captain's saying, what the bait looked like. If he says, okay, I'm marking the school, 30, 40 fathoms here. You know what I mean. But if you're sliding like on a breeze or something, the fish is popping right away. I mean, I'll probably nose bait as the boat's still sliding. That way, the bait looks more natural as you're letting it. As the boat's still in motion, through a school, like say you're fishing dolphin, the boat stops on the dolphin, I would nose hook it to start. You know what I mean? That way there's no drag on it and it looks natural sliding through the water. But it's the same type of thing though, Phil. You know what I mean? If there's you're trying to deep soak your bait and there's a lot of wind and a lot of swell and a lot of current and stuff like that, and there's a lot of drag every time the boat rocks, and you're trying to, soak your bait way out, you're maybe not going to want, a butt hook just because the way it's going to make the fish look, bait swim, maybe a shoulder hook, So again, it's paying attention to what is going on around you. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it might take a minute or two to adjust and that type of stuff. But I mean, I would probably say I would start off with a nose hook just because it's the easiest to cast the bait out, this and that. I mean, generally for most people, because I mean, a butt hook, you have a tendency to cast the bait off quite often. So I would say, to start off probably a nose hook and then go from there,
Recently, they've also been catching some ironfish during the daytime. Colt snipers have been really good, and Dawasacanas have been really, really good. Are you up in the bow? Is that where you should be when you're throwing an iron, or not necessarily?
Well, there or the down one side. You know what I mean? I would say like up in the bow would probably be, just because you're out of the way of the guys that are trying to fly line a bait and stuff like that. But I mean, it depends on if you can work it. You know what I mean? If you're, I would say the easiest place to go up and fish one of those is up in the bow. 100%. So, but I've seen guys do it in the stern and stuff like that, but you just have to pay attention to the fall and, follow it around. You still have to follow your line on the drift. I mean, the boat's constantly moving, so you're not going to cast it out at off the stern and just sit in the stern while you're drifting over your line or whatever. So, but easiest way, yes, up in the bow.
And there's a foamer, let's say, and I cast into that foamer. Do I sink my jig, or do I put it in gear and start winding right? Do I get all excited and start winding right away, or do I let it sink for a little bit?
I would say the fish is going to be in the first 10 feet of the water column, obviously, right?
Yeah.
So I think once it hits the water, by the time you're putting it in gear, I think it's sunk enough to where you can start your wind.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because that fish is all up on the surface. It's not, you're not looking for fish 60 feet down. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I would think, like I said, by the time you cast, put it into gear and start to wind, I think that thing's going to sink far enough to where you're going to want to wind. I don't think you want to sit there and just let a bunch of line out on it. You know what I mean?
Right.
I think you bypass where the fish is feeding at.
When you're fishing a sinker rig, is choosing a good hot bait really important? And do you hook the bait the same way always on a sinker rig?
You know, the brawler rig I did from Captain Concepts or whatever, you know, Matt, that I really like that way, you know, of fishing it, just because you can feel your bait, you get bit on the sink, and the way to hook that is, you know, you're gonna go basically split the gills, you know, on the bottom and close their mouth and up through the tip of their nose like that. And I just feel like it keeps their mouth shut, because a lot of times with the regular rubber band rig, when you drop your fish down and you're nose hooking him sideways, the mouth opens up and he just doesn't look natural. And then when he's sinking, he's spinning. There's like, you know, and I mean, that brawler rig, I think is by far
the best.
Yeah. You can get bit on the wind, on a slow wind in, because the fish looks natural on the swim up, on the sink, you know what I mean? You can fish different, and the bait, I feel, stays livelier longer, you know what I mean? I think when that bait does that spin and, you know, it doesn't stay natural, you know? Its mouth's all wide open from all the water, you know? But, I mean, and it's all personal preference, you know what I mean? But if I was recommending to my passengers, I would be telling them to drop shot the brawler rig or whatever, you know? That's what I generally tell people.
So for a passenger, we're not done yet. We're getting there.
I was like, okay.
You know, I'm going to make one comment about this podcast. This is one of the best podcasts that I think these people have ever heard. There is so much knowledge coming out. You're so personable. This is freaking, you're killing this, man.
Thanks,
you know,
man.
I'm not letting you go for it until midnight. What are you talking about? I'm going to let you get
I
down.
got to go get the boat ready.
I know.
We're trying to go fishing.
I'm going to keep you another 10 minutes. You know, guys, passengers, they look at the scenario right now and they say, this is so bitching. I'm fishing all day. I'm fishing all night. And I get that. But I've been a crew member before. Man, that's hard on the crew. You guys, when do you sleep? It's brutal, isn't it? I know you get some sleep, but
we make it. You know what I mean? Like that. Like I can't speak for all the boats, but for like us, like if we know there's going to be night fishing, like I'll send one of the deckhands down to where the cook in between, you know, they'll go get a couple hours and I'll switch them out throughout the day. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's like, I mean, if me and another crew member and the cook can't handle it, I mean, you always scream down in the bunk room and get the other deckhand up if the fishing gets that good. You know what I mean? But we try to break it up, at least on our boat. We try to give, you know what I mean? And this is the same with the seconds and stuff like that, you know? Like, I mean, obviously I'm not a young pup anymore, and it's like I'm not going to stay up all day and all night and all that stuff, you know? But I try to generally, depending on what's going, you know, stay up as long as, you know, there's an opportunity and stuff like that. You know what I mean? But, you know, I mean, we got Ryan Block on the boat, as, you know, he runs second, and also my relief along, you know, Jeff and, you know, Jordan last year. You know, the guys that we have are, you know, capable of driving the boat at night and stopping on schools and catching fish for you. You know what I mean? So it's you know, it again, you kind of feel it out. Yeah, you kind of feel it out. But, you know, I mean, and then we have 5 or 6 deckhands that we can rotate in crews, so it's not 2 guys, you know what I mean? So I'm really happy with the crew we have this year. You know, guys coming back from last year, new guys we got and stuff like that, and you know, so I'm really pretty stoked to see what happens this year. You know what I mean?
Yeah, me too. Tell us a little bit about the Apollo, her capabilities. You know, is there staterooms? Is there bunks?
Oh boy,
a little bit about it. Not just a little, because I'm letting you go in 5 minutes. She looks super comfortable.
She's got 5 staterooms. 4 of them have 2 bunks, so you know, basically the starboard and port side you'd be sleeping with another, or if it was you and your kid or whatever, you would have your own room. The forward stateroom has 4 bunks, and then it has bunks after that, which are pretty much all doubles.
Oh wow!
So I mean, there's a couple I think 2 or 3 of them are singles, but the other
We'll put
other
Scott
ones,
in that one.
there you go.
For sure.
But very comfortable. It's a miniature long range boat.
It is, right?
It's the platform. I can't say from back when I ran the Cat Special, that would be like the platform with how much room you have on the sides, how much, the stability and everything like that. It's a big roomy boat for such a small boat.
Yeah.
It's a far cry from when I ran the Pacific Quest.
Yeah.
Honestly.
Yes.
But I'm very happy with with given the opportunity, from Jeff and Rick, to allow me to buy into the boat with them and stuff like that. I'm really excited about what to transpire here, and we could do long range trips, like we were doing Guadalupe, or the boat was doing Guadalupe trips until obviously Guadalupe got
Closed
away.
down.
But
Yeah.
What we were thinking about trying to, hopefully that we can get here is like, if that bluefin moves up and it's, biting springtime, or, that sea bass up at the Channel Islands or whatever island, starts biting, we could go up there, do like a 3-4 day trip, go up there, spend a day or two, catch some sea bass,
right,
run down, we have the time frame and stuff like that, where we could bring like a miniature long range boat to San Pedro, to the local islands here. And I don't know if it's this is, thoughts that we're having, what we would like it to do, but I don't know what the interest is. We'll see how that goes, But
I can't wait. May 31st till June 2nd. We're with you. That's going to be a lot of fun. How long do you stay here before you go to Seaforth?
We're here till July 1st.
Okay, and then you go to Seaforth until when?
The end of October.
And then you're back here again.
I believe so. Yeah. And that's all pending on what transpires.
Right.
We'd like to be able to come back up here for that November to give us the ability, because, obviously most of the time that fish moves up here to the banks, and it's closer to go here to, like the Tanner and stuff like that than it is, like if that fish is up there by the Osborne and stuff, it's closer for us to go here. But
of course, heading's nicer too.
That's all up in the air. You know what I mean? We haven't quite committed to where we're going to be November 1st, and it's all going to depend as the fishing progresses. You know what I mean?
Perfect. So, Greg, you got to get back down to the boat. This was such a great podcast, man. There was so much information. I deeply appreciate you taking time. I know how busy you are, my friend, and I wish you a fantastic 2023, and I can't wait to fish with you May 31st. We'll be there.
All right, get ready.
Thanks again, Greg.
All right, thanks, Phil. Appreciate it.